Coming up next for the presentation before lunch is going to be Carl Ray. Carl is the program executive for the SBIR and STTR programs, the Small Business Innovative Research Program and the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. Carl?
And I too am excited to be here. You'll have to pardon my voice a little bit. I think my allergies might be acting up a little bit. But I'm excited to be here, and I hope that I can provide you all, before lunch, an exciting tour of SBIR. One of the charts you've seen all morning is this, basically what we're calling the pipeline chart. And while we've talked about it somewhat, a lot of folks, I think you should really take a good look at it, because for the SBIR program in particular, it has a lot of meaning to me because I've been running the program for a long time. And the one word I want you to walk away from this meeting with, at least in terms of SBIR, is one of opportunity. Because this portfolio really provides an opportunity for you to enhance the SBIR program to a point where it makes it much easier and much more of a capability to extend the SBIR program into areas where it has not been able to go before. And that's in the area of moving the technology and maturing the technology out to the fruition where you can actually get to areas of utilization and demonstration. The Small Business Innovation Research Program and the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. You've heard a lot of programs this morning. I'm sure you're starting to figure out that each of the programs are unique and have unique features to them. In the names of these two programs, the SBIR and STTR programs, I hope everyone's caught the fact that they both start out with small business. These are two legislated, mandated programs that are strictly set aside for small business. And that's the main feature of these two programs. The SBIR program is one which allows you to take technology, basically take the feasibility in your ideas, take it to fruition, and then in phases work on the fruition, and then work on actually maturing it into a technology development. The STTR program is much like the SBIR program, except that it requires you to collaborate with a research institution. And oftentimes it's used to take research that's coming out of universities and other laboratories and basically use a small business as a collaborative partner to transfer and to mature that technology into a product. Now, both of these programs, of course, from a congressional perspective, are really honed in the interest of also taking that technology and moving it into the commercial marketplace. But we're not alone. One of the other distinctive differences in the SBIR and STTR programs is that it's actually administered by 11 agencies, of which NASA is only one of them. If you're an agency and you have $100 million in extramural budget, you are required to basically implement or administer an SBIR program. If you have more than $1 billion budget, then you also have to implement the STTR programs. Now, both of these programs, all of these agencies, we meet regularly. I know there's been some questions about how we do kind of cross-agency pollination. We do talk about issues. We do talk about the programs themselves. And over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been much more collaboration among the agencies, not only in terms of the technologies, but in the way we implement these programs. And the total right now is about $2.6 billion. The way NASA implements the SBIR and the STTR programs, we implement them across the agency on a fair and basically a fair fair allocation of topics and subtopics that basically touch on all the mission directorates and are applicable to all of the 10 centers that we have. What we've done is the SBIR program is predominantly targeted towards our mission directorates, and basically we work with them to develop the topics and the subtopics for each annual solicitation, and we also work with the centers to actually develop areas of discipline and areas of research that they're interested in on an annual basis. Like the other programs, we have a level 2 office. Our level 2 office is in Ames, and we have points of contact. We have personnel at each and every center, so that it makes the access to the program relatively easy from any location within the nation. Consistent with the programs. As I said, they're based on the extramural. That extramural is calculated each and every year annually based on, for SBIR, 2.5% of the extramural budget, and in STTR, it's basically 0.3 of the extramural budget. Now, in definition, the extramural budget is basically an agency's R&D funding. That is not funding that is utilized internal to the agency by its employees or within its laboratory facilities. The SBIR program and the STTR program are what they call 3-phase programs. The first 2 phases are actually funded by the program. The last phase has to be funded by non-SBIR dollars. In that first phase, the feasibility, what we call the feasibility or study phase, it's the point at which the company can come in and basically put together their proposal, have it assessed, and then go to work in terms of trying to prove the feasibility of what their concepts are. With that, we give them $100K, and for SBIR, we provide them 6 months with which to basically show proof that the feasibility is there. For STTR, we provide an extra 6 months because the collaboration, the additional collaboration with the research institution oftentimes takes a different agreement, or at least an established agreement, and we give additional time for the research institution and the company to basically formalize that agreement. Once you get past the selection phase and you actually go to work and you successfully complete the phase 1, you're then down selected, and only phase 1 companies can be down selected to a phase 2. In that area, that's when the real work starts. In the phase 2 in SBIR and STTR, you have the opportunity to work for basically 2 years, 24 months, to actually bring your feasibility to either deliverables or a prototype. And for the SBIR, right now you have both of them. You have $750K over that 2 months in which to perform that work. We've started, as of this year, this will be the first year we're implementing it, a new feature which is called the Phase 2E. Basically, this is a bridging funding, which I'll talk about. I'd rather talk about it in the terms of Phase 3. So let me cover the Phase 3 first. The Phase 3 is a phase where you make a determination and you look for an additional advocate or an additional target for the outcomes in the Phase 2. That can be a mission directorate, it can be a center project, or it can be a commercial, basically a commercial venture. What we've done in the Phase 2E is, because this is so difficult, it's difficult to infuse technology, certainly, into mission directorates. It's also difficult to find investors to invest in your technologies once the initial SBIR or STTR funds are used up. What we've done is to provide an extra $150K, which can be applied for. It has to be selected as well. But if you can show validation and basically a good proposal for an additional option, this funding goes goes to extend your phase 2 while you get your phase 3 in place. And also it acts as an incentive for other investors or mission directorates to leverage the outcome of the work you've done and utilize the additional funding. In terms of topics, all of the solicitations that we put out, both STTR and the SBIR topics, are generated by either the mission directorates, as I said, or the centers. These are the topics for the SBIR program for 2010. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of them, except to say that each mission directorate, we work with them directly to basically develop these. Underneath these, you will find, like this year, the SBIR has almost 127 subtopics. This is an example of 2 of the subtopics that will be available. These are examples of 2009. Since the solicitation hasn't come out yet, I prefer not to elaborate on the 2010 actual subtopics until the solicitation is published. But this gives you an idea, if you look at environmental control and life support systems, how they can break out into subtopics that basically go into particular areas of atmosphere revitalization, all the way down to control systems. In the communications area, it even expands even further into compression software modulation and different areas of space communications. In terms of how we review or how we look at your proposals, the factors are pretty clear. We look at the technical merit. We look at the feasibility of the proposal as you write it, which means you have to be convincing about the ability to actually bring the actual content to fruition. We also look at the experience of the innovator and the experience of any key role players they may have working on their teams. We also take a look at the effectiveness of the work plan. Basically, this is like looking at a business plan that you would do on the outside to a commercial venture. And then we look at the commercial merit, which also includes the potential for being utilized by NASA in one of the mission directorates or at a center. Once we get to that, obviously we get more proposals than we can possibly fund. Therefore, we have to rank them in a priority order. So we do take recommendations from the mission directorates and from the centers, and then we basically do our our selection from that, with that recommendation in line, looking at the priorities. In terms of budget, I remember looking back at the SBIR program. As I said, it's had a long and arduous history. It started in 1983 for NASA and many of the other agencies. At that point in time, it was only $4.9 million, which is kind of interesting. So needless to say, we've grown a bit, and this basically shows the types of awards and the award streams that we expect to have over the next 5 years. The STTR, while much smaller, it does really take on research that is much broader than typically is in the SBIR program, and therefore I think a lot more companies look at it from the standpoint of more of a discipline type of research. As I said, we utilize these. We utilize the STTR more to sustain the competencies at the centers and the disciplines that we have there than we do the SBIR program. The other goal that we have in terms of administering the program is certainly to provide equal opportunity across the United States as a whole. This map shows a distribution of our 2009 demographics. I think we can be proud to say that I think we've had almost at least one award in almost every state. And typically it moves around a bit, but you can tell by this map, there are states that have a much more of a technical or research-oriented center, and then there are those that are coming up. but it does provide an opportunity for states that aren't traditionally in the midst of the technical arena to start moving in that direction, and certainly use the SBIR to do so. A couple examples of the types of technologies that come out of SBIR. These are 3 technologies that came out and were used on the Mars rovers. While this is in the past somewhat, I like them because it shows the ability and the usefulness, the utility of the SBIR program as a program itself, which is one of the things I really like about the program. In terms of the breadth and depth of the technologies, you can see that we've gone all the way from developing an ASCII chip, which in the harsh environment of space, this ASCII chip was to really reduce the single event latch-up issues that we had due to space radiation. And if you look at the Yardney, the lithium-ion battery, ion batteries is something that has been progressively improving over the years, and this is just one step, and they continue to improve every year, actually. And then the StarSys research Boulder from Boulder, Colorado, they developed basically a heat switch that allows the cooling systems for our avionics on the rovers to actuate and deactuate as necessary to keep the temperatures at a fixed rate. This is one of the technologies that is more recent, but it also shows the diversity of the program. The last technology I showed you were pretty much oriented towards use in NASA missions. We also find technologies where they start out being targeted towards NASA missions, and then find merit for the commercial marketplace, and this is one of those. Basically, the technology that was developed here is the light-emitting diodes. These small pinhead infrared diodes were developed by Quantum Devices almost back in 2003, 2004. And they were actually worked on prior to that in terms of looking at ultraviolet light for plant growth on the ISS space station. After looking at that and looking at changing the frequency within the diodes, they found that there was also a potential benefit for living tissue. And they had started to experiment with that in collaboration with a research center up in Wisconsin. Since that time, they've developed 2 products, one which is called the Warp 10 and another which is called the Warp 75. And both of these are utilized today for both healing and something else that they call, that more recently was used. The example being when you go to get teeth extracted or gums worked on, there's a general disease that you get as an outcome of that called mucositis. And what they did is they did an experiment utilizing the light therapy on the gums prior to doing the surgeries, and found that there was a tremendous reduction in the attraction of mucositis when you use this light therapy. But also the Warp 10 has also been reported to provide a healing characteristic that allows healing to take place supposedly 1/6 of the time that it would normally take to heal things like subdermal cuts and wounds. They've also started to experiment with the light therapy on burn victims. In terms of the solicitation, we are at within a week to basically July 19th is when we are coming out with our solicitation. We've got the content and the subtopics all done. It'll be opening on the 19th and it'll be closing on September 2nd. And then we'll be announcing the award winners on the 22nd of November. If you want more information on the program itself, you can go to sbir.nasa.gov And we have an extensive website where you can that provides more information on the program as a whole. A couple of things in closing. We've talked a lot about SBIR or about the portfolio, the pipeline, and I just want you to know that some of the benefits of SBIR, having been here already and having already worked in the environment over the years, and the struggle of many small businesses to try and move their technologies forward, I see a significant benefit in terms of being able to navigate some of the additional features of the OCT program structure. And that is to say that you can move from one structure to another and perhaps find availability for maturing and for even for demoing the results of your projects more easily. And if you work at it, you can actually see you can actually put together a strategy where you could start with the SBIR and go through the game changing and then go right out to the to some of the demo programs out at the far end as the technology starts to improve and starts to get higher. Also within the early stage opportunities, I think it's going to raise the quality of SBIR inputs and applications just by merely providing alternatives. As you can see today, there's different programs, there's different features, and I think those features are going to start to be more widely known, and as they are, people will make different choices about which programs they want to try and find their dreams in. And I think that's going to make a tremendous difference to all the quality of all the programs. Let's just go. In terms of benefits, in summary, I'd just like to say that I think the OCT program structure provides a platform, and the SBIR, as the SBIR does, to create a tap and a pool of small business entrepreneurs, to create a tap, give the government the ability to tap into the small business community. And that is because the small business community really does have some highly specialized areas of research, and the government should utilize those to the extent it can. It also provides opportunities for the small businesses to participate in the federal R&D, which was the original intent of the congressional mandate. It also creates, this SBIR program also creates an environment in which large businesses can take advantage and find and have access to small businesses so that they can link up with them and utilize the technologies and the research results that they culminate or cultivate, that is. Also, the SBIR program provides a pathway and a mechanism for the academic and research communities, especially the Sttr program, where you can basically take research or university technologies and get a hand with, from a small business with pushing that technology out into the marketplace. And then through all of this, Congress's original intent was certainly to stimulate the economy as a whole. And I think the SBIR has shown itself to be able to do that. And across the agencies, we have had a number of studies that have come out and demonstrated that if implemented correctly, these programs can work and can improve the growth of the economy within the nation as a whole. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Hi, Carl. John Iman, NASA headquarters. With the merger of SBIR into the early stage development, could a company not only respond to a phase 1, but might also bring forward the idea to the NIAC, so you could have some parallel activity, if you will, where a company would be going after both early efforts, if you will?
Actually, to tell you the truth, there are some of the restrictions and limitations that we've looked at, but the combinations of what companies might be able to do are relatively extensive right now. The only rule I would think that would be kind of commonsensical is that you do not want to duplicate the same level of effort utilizing two sets of funds. So I think anything beyond that is probably possible.
We actually have a question from our audience watching online. Tim from Florida is wondering if there's any plans to revise or improve the process for application and inputs.
Repeat the question, please.
Is there any plan for improving the application and input process?
Well, I'd have to understand, we're continuously improving the process as we get comments from our appliers. I'd have to know specifically what the issue is in terms of the application. I will say this, I think we have one of the best application processes of all the agencies in that it's totally electronic, and we have a 24-hour help desk.
George Miley, NPL Associates, and we've successfully competed for SBIRs in the past. But thank you. But one problem is that the requests for proposals often ends up being very narrow. You have to happen to be in that very specific area to be able to do anything in many of the solicitations. And with the new spirit of broadening things, is there the possibility of having more broad topics coming in?
Yeah, the topics as they have been in the past, as I said, have been relatively focused toward mission directive initiatives. And as that starts to change with the advent, as Bobby spoke of earlier, with the advent of the new consuls and the new committees, I think a number of things are obviously going to influence the direction towards how broadly or how narrowly the topics go, as much as even how many phase one versus phase twos we do. So I think a number of those things are going to be driven, but the important part of it is the fact that at this point, OCT structure will allow, and the consuls will allow, for all of these programs to be kind of joined at the hip and in step lock. And I think that's one of the most important enhancements and opportunities that we have for this, is that we can strategically take a look at not only the topics or the research areas that we want to go into, but also look at how we want to allocate that research in terms of dollars and in terms of broad nature and in terms of what frame of time we think that technology can be utilized. If there are no further questions, I think Dave's going to announce we can go to lunch.